The Silent House. In the quiet village of Hawthorne, nestled between misty hills and dark woods, stood a house that had long been the subject of whispered tales and fearful glances. The locals called it the Silent House, not because it was particularly quiet, but because no one who entered ever came out the same. Some said it was cursed, others believed it was haunted, but all agreed that the house was a place to be avoided. The house was an old Victorian mansion, its paint peeling and windows darkened by years of neglect. Ivy snaked up its walls like a green shroud, and the front yard was a tangle of overgrown weeds and dead branches. Despite its decrepit state, there was an eerie charm about it that made it impossible to ignore. One crisp autumn evening, a young woman named Emily, new to the village and eager for adventure, decided to explore the house. She had heard the stories but dismissed them as mere superstition. Her curiosity was piqued, and the thrill of uncovering the truth about the Silent House was too enticing to resist. Emily arrived at the house just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced eerily on the ground. The wind howled through the trees, making the old iron gate creak on its hinges as she pushed it open. She stepped onto the cracked path leading to the front door, her footsteps crunching on the gravel. With a deep breath, she turned the tarnished handle and pushed the door open. Inside, the air was musty and cold. Dust motes floated in the weak beam of light from her flashlight, and the silence was almost oppressive. The grand foyer was a cavernous space with high ceilings and a grand staircase that spiraled up to the second floor. The walls were lined with faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors who seemed to watch her every move. Emily's flashlight beam flickered as she made her way through the house. She wandered through dusty parlors filled with moss-eaten furniture, a dining room with a table set for an invisible dinner party, and a library with shelves full of ancient. The house seemed frozen in time, as though it was waiting for something or someone. As she explored, she began to notice strange things. In one room, the air grew unnaturally cold, and her breath came out in visible puffs. In another, the sound of footsteps echoed through the empty halls, though she was alone. The old grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, though it hadn't moved in years. Each time Emily checked, the hands were stuck at 12. Suddenly, she heard a noise, a soft, mournful cry coming from somewhere deep within the house. Her heart raced as she followed the sound, descending into the basement. The stairs creaked beneath her feet, and the air grew heavier with each step. The basement was even more decrepit than the rest of the house, with broken furniture and cobwebs hanging from the rafters. In the dim light, Emily saw a door at the end of the basement, partially ajar. The crying was louder now, almost as if it was pleading for help. She hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open. Inside was a small, dark room with a single, dusty mirror leaning against the far wall. The crying stopped abruptly. Emily approached the mirror, her flashlight illuminating its cracked surface. As she looked into it, she saw not her own reflection but a figure standing behind her, a gaunt, spectral face with hollow eyes staring back. Emily spun around, but the room was empty. Panic set in, and she stumbled backward, knocking over an old chair. The mirror began to glow with a faint, eerie light, and the air grew colder still. The crying returned, now louder and more desperate. Emily tried to leave, but the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. She was trapped. The mirror's glow intensified, and the figure within it seemed to move, its mouth opening in a silent scream. Emily felt a presence closing in on her, an oppressive force that weighed heavily on her chest. She was suffocating, overwhelmed by an inexplicable fear. The mirror's surface rippled as if it were water, and the figure reached out, its long, bony fingers stretching toward her. Desperate, Emily grabbed a nearby wrench and smashed the mirror. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces, but the force within the mirror seemed to erupt outward. The room was filled with a blinding light, and Emily felt herself being pulled into the chaos. When she awoke, she was lying on the basement floor, the mirror's shards scattered around her. The crying had stopped, and the oppressive presence had vanished. She scrambled to her feet and fled from the house, her heart pounding with terror. Emily never spoke of what she had experienced in the silent house, but she was not the same. Her eyes were haunted, and she seemed to carry an unspoken burden. The villagers noticed the change and whispered among themselves, wondering what secrets the house had revealed. The silent house remained as it was, a place of dread and mystery. Some say that the spirits trapped within still cry out for release, and others believe that the house itself is alive, feeding on the fear of those who dare to enter. And though Emily never returned, the house continued to stand as a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks behind its silent fog.